Hey guys, Gian here. Today we'll be covering optimizing and scaling your ads. We'll be covering the learning phase. What is the learning phase and how important is it? When to cut your ads specifically in terms of the percentage of AOV. When to scale your ads and how to scale your ads. And then we're going to figure out what is the best column conventions for you. So columns are these. You see the campaign name, delivery, bid strategy, budget, attribution setting, results, reach, and etc. I'll be covering that, and also I'll be covering frequency and how that relates to each campaign and how it affects the creatives and what you can do to combat high frequencies. So the first thing we're going to cover is the learning phase. So what is the learning phase? Learning phase revolves around the optimization of the ads. When you launched an ad, let's go to the ad itself, you're going to see delivery. It's going to be in drafts right now, but once you actually review and publish this ad, it's going to be in what it's called a learning phase. This is where the Facebook algorithm tries to learn as much as possible in regards to what is working and what is not. It will try to learn what a purchase is to make sure your ads are as optimized as it possibly can. Once it's out of the learning phase, then that's when your ad or ad set is most optimized. However, it takes over 50 conversions for e-commerce. It's usually purchase. 50 purchases or conversions to exit out the learning phase. 50 conversions is actually a lot, no matter what budget you're running. If you're running 10,000 to 50,000, all the way up to $500,000 when it comes to one specific ad or one specific ad set, that is a lot of conversions. So the importance, the pros of exiting the learning phase, which means having more than 50 purchases, is that your ads will be optimized more efficiently. However, the cons is it takes a lot of time and a lot of budget and a lot of testing to exit out that phase. So is it important to exit out the learning phase? And we're like, how important is it? In the broad scheme of things, from testing accounts from 5,000 a month spend, 10,000, 50,000, all the way up to 150,000 a month to more than $500,000 in a month in ad spend, the learning phase is not that important. It's actually fairly difficult to let all your campaigns exit out of the learning phase. So if you see that it's learning limited, that means it's been over a week and hasn't hit 50 purchases, don't worry. That's very, very common, even for large agencies spending hundreds and millions of dollars on a annual basis. So hopefully that covers what the learning phase is, how important is it, and the intricacies of the learning phase and optimization. Next, we will cover cutting ads and when to cut it. So if we go to our doc that we created earlier, we scroll all the way down to info. We can check AOV, average order value. What we covered earlier was if one person goes on your site and purchases a few products, what is the average of the value of people usually purchase? So if the AOV is 100 or 200, if they purchase one or two products, it's the average across all the purchasers combined. So let's say the AOV is $100. The target cost per acquisition, what we covered earlier, is $50. The target cost per acquisition is something you want to hit. If it exceeds your CPA or your target CPA, then you want to cut your ad. Another rule of thumb is like if it exceeds your target CPA of $50 without a purchase at all, that's when you want to cut it. Maybe you want to lower your CPA to $40, but ideally you want to keep it around 40 to 60% of AOV. That is your target CPA. That is when you cut your ads, and that's when you cut your ad sets. So just to reiterate, if there's no purchase and it exceeded our 40 to 50% AOV targets, then you want to cut that ad and ad set. I'll be teaching you how to properly cut an ad and an ad set in a campaign. So let's go to the top of funnel campaign. We click on top of funnel. Since we don't have data here, since it's in drafts, let's have an example. Let's go for US. If it has a CPA of $50 and no purchases, do you want to cut it? Of course, since there's no purchases. We want to keep below that CPA. However, if it has a few purchases and the CPA is $40, do we want to keep that ad on or that ad set on? Yes, the answer is yes. You want to keep it on because it's below our target CPA and it has purchases. So this is how you specifically cut. First, we look at the ad level. Let me click on one specific ad set. So within each ad set, we created 5 ads within that ad set. If this ad set has a few purchases, but a few purchases and has a lower CPA of $50, let's say the CPA is $40 and has a few purchases, we want to keep that on. If this ad specifically doesn't have any purchases and it exceeded our target CPA of $50, let's say it spent $60 with no purchase, then you want to turn this off. When you optimize your ads, you want to look at each ad set individually, click on it, go to the ad level, and turn off the corresponding ads first, then the ad sets. The reasoning why is because some ad sets might have some purchases. And maybe if you cut at the ad set level first, then you're ruining the optimization. Then you have to inject more audiences, and it's very capital inefficient. So my rule of thumb is if there's purchases within each ad set, look at the ad level first and cut there. Look at the metrics, see if it's performing. And then if there's a few purchases, then maybe just cut those ads that don't have any purchases. Don't cut at the ad set level immediately. The only time you want to cut at the ad set level is if the entire ad set exceeded our target CPA, which in our example was $50, and had no purchases across all those ads. Then that's when you want to cut your ad set. The importance of setting a 40 to 50% AOV is so you know what your CPA is and so you know you're capital efficient. A lot of people out there when it comes to agency owners or when it comes to media buyers, senior media buyers, director of paid media, they let their ads run way too long, and that actually decreases the overall result of the campaigns when you're doing reportings. So just to reiterate, make sure you have a target CPA, usually 40 to 50% of AOV. Make sure to keep that in mind and make sure that's very important. Also, make sure to cut at the ad level first, then the ad set level. If an ad set has no purchases and exceeded our target CPA, then you want to cut that. Then you want to replace it. So that covers when to cut your ads in terms of percentages of AOV. Next is scaling. Scaling really depends on what budget you're running for. Since our example here is a $9,000 budget, we have to look at how many purchases each ad or ad set has and react appropriately. Ideally, for each ad set to scale, you want at least more than 3 to 5 purchases with a lower CPA, which equates to a higher ROAS. So there's different scaling techniques. So today we'll be covering very basic techniques. In the Pro, there's heaps and heaps of different types of scaling techniques that are very complex when it comes to strategies. But I'll give you some advice in regards to scaling. There are different types of ways to scale. Some scaling within the ad set level is basically increasing the budget by 20% on a day-to-day basis. So just going to the budget here and adjusting it by 20%. If you're very risk averse, that's fairly safe. However, if you are very risky and you want to scale really, really fast, then you want to increase this budget by 50% every day. So each account reacts differently in regards to scaling. Sometimes ad accounts react really well when you decrease the budget. Some other accounts react really well when you increase it by 20% every 3 days or 5 days. Some other accounts react very well when you increase it by 50% every single day. So you definitely want to split test those different techniques in regards to scaling. So in regards to scaling, you can increase the budget on the ad set level or the campaign level. In Pro, we'll be covering scaling campaigns as a whole. So that means creating entire campaigns for scaling. We'll be covering BPAs, we'll be covering super scaling campaigns, and etc. And also different strategies and techniques that you can implement for scaling. Next, we will be covering columns. So what are columns and how is it important to you? So in our doc, I wrote down the important column conventions that you can implement into your campaigns and the reasoning why. So in this orange section, This is going to be covering a majority for the creative aspect. So from here, you're going to see how the creative is doing when it comes to the image or video, as well as the ad copy or primary text. The blue will be more targeted towards the sales funnel, seeing like how people progress. If there's a lot of add to carts, then it's going to be initiate checkouts, then it's going to be purchase. And lastly, it's your most important. This is the majority of like what your clients care about. They care about how many purchases are there, the amount spent, and the purchase conversion value, and ROAS. So let me explain some of these columns and what they mean to you. Budget, very self-explanatory. When it comes to CBO and ABO, how much budget is allocated to that specific ad set or that specific campaign. Delivery will showcase if it is in drafts, if it's delivered, or if there's any errors. Next is the attribution setting. In the attribution setting, we actually set it to a 1-day click because it's the most accurate in regards to reporting. When it comes to reach, the reach objective maximizes the number of people who see your ads and how often they see them. And in regards to impressions, the different impressions is the number of times your ads has been displayed on a screen or a mobile device. Next is link clicks, very self-explanatory. That's how many times people click on a link. CPM, cost per mile, cost per milli, depends where you're from. It's the cost of 1,000 impressions. CPC is cost per click, so how much a click costs. And then your CTR is click-through rate, and then your unique CTR. So in regards to CTR, it's how often someone clicked on your ad divided by impressions. And like what we covered earlier, impressions is how many times your ad was viewed on a mobile device or on any screen. And when it comes to unique CTR, first let's cover unique clicks. Unique clicks is a metric that counts people but not the action. This metric uses sample data and is estimation. It's much more accurate than CTR. And to calculate a unique CTR is unique clicks all divided by reach. Next is cost per result or cost per purchase or cost per acquisition in your add to cart, initiate checkout, purchase amount spent, purchase conversion value. Purchase conversion value is how many purchases are there times the AOV or the product price. So this is very important. This actually showcases the dollar figure amount that was generated from ads itself. Then ROAS is basically your ROI for ads, your return on ad spend. So it's calculated by purchase conversion value by over amount spent. So right now I'll be showcasing how to actually inject custom columns into your campaigns. So let's click on this button, columns. Let's click on customize columns. Here on the right, let's exit out all of these good things. And in the Google Doc, I'll be pausing this and I'll be going back to you once all the column names are organized and injected. You can do this with me as well. So I injected all the columns here, and earlier I explained what each column means. Make sure when you're creating these columns, make sure you deselect all these items. Next is you click save as preset, and I'm just going to change it to Gian, my name. And I'm going to click apply. From here, you just refresh the page. Then now everything is optimized. Now you have your custom columns. I'd like to add these are the most essential columns that you should have. The reasoning why is it covers the creative side of checking out your CTR, unique CTR, but also covers the sales process, and also covers the most important aspects when it comes to what your client is looking for. In Pro, we'll be covering more in-depth column strategies specifically for the creative side, because when testing dozens and dozens of creatives, you definitely need to know which specific columns to use to figure out what is the best performing creatives and copy as well. For the top of funnel, you want to aim for above a 1% CTR for your top of funnel specifically. Your unique CTR, you want above a 1.5% CTR. When it comes to the middle funnel and bottom of funnel, these are going to be very, very high. They're going to be roughly like 5 to 10% CTR and unique CTR, because there's going to be a lot of volume of like people clicking through your ad. Lastly, I'd like to mention is frequency. In Pro, we'll go in depth in regards to frequency, but that's another column that you should implement and keep track of. Frequency is the amount of times an ad is shown to one individual person. Usually for your top of funnel, you want to keep the frequency less than like a 1.7 or 1.5. If it's more than a 2, you definitely need to refresh the creative and copy. When it comes to the middle funnel and bottom funnel, you'll definitely see the frequency jump to maybe a 4 to 6, even up to a 12, because there's going to be a small audience being retargeted. So they're going to see your ads multiple times. I'll give you an example. Frequency. Let's say the frequency is 5. That means I've seen that specific ad 5 times. And I just want to recap for your top funnel, keep it below a 1.8 frequency. If it jumps more than a 2, then you want to replace that creative and copy. For your middle funnel and bottom funnel, if it exceeds a 6 frequency, then you want to change up your creative and your copy. However, I've managed campaigns and ad sets where the frequency was averaging a 12 and the ROAS was still fairly high. So hopefully that gives a breakdown in regards to optimizing and scaling your ads, breaking down the learning phase and how important is it, when to cut your ads specifically in terms of percentage of AOV, when to scale, different scaling techniques, what the columns represent and how are they important to you, and also the frequency. It was great speaking with you. Much love. This is Gian.